We're not supposed to start for another 5 minutes. Is most people here? Is anybody not here? Can you put your hand up?
Some of the old timers might not be here.
Some of the old timers?
The long timers, the frequent flyers.
Ah.
So they need to come and hear me give briefing.
Ah, okay.
But I'm sure you've got a 5-minute joke up your sleeve.
A 5-minute joke. Okay. How many of you have heard? Any of you afraid of ghosts? There's a couple of ghost stories. One I very rarely tell, because I told it so many times, was in the coffin joke. You know that one? There's actually 2 of those jokes. Maybe you haven't heard the new one about the fellow who was walking home one evening. He had a choice of going through the cemetery, which was a shortcut, or going the long way round, which was safe. So he chose going the shortcut through the cemetery. And there's something about cemeteries at night time. You may notice any paths which go through the cemetery, the lights, the lampposts are always much further apart than on a proper road. So it's always a little bit dark. And as he was walking along the shortcut, he heard a sound. Chip, 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 chip. And he wondered, what could that be? He wasn't scared yet, but then he had a flashlight, and he pointed the flashlight in the direction of that sound, going chip, chip, chip. And so he shone the flashlight around, and then he saw the cause. There was a workman who was working late on one of the headstones. This isn't an ordinary worker, nothing really spooky about that. But then he had to ask the worker, what are you doing working so late? And the worker said, somebody spelt my name wrong on the gravestone. Okay. There's another more spooky one, but I'm sure you've all heard the old one before. Anyway, I think that's most people are here. So, shall we start? Okay. Sometimes you may wonder why is it that I do tell silly jokes, what some people call dad jokes. And it's because that's what they call a monk, a senior monk. They call them, like in Thai, it's called Lung Po. And what does Po mean? That means dad. So it's funny, it's monk dad jokes. But nevertheless, the reason why I say those funny stories is because when people start a meditation retreat, okay in the back there? You okay there? Okay. Okay. He can stay, he's on the staff. He looks after me. Did you ever... So, very good. Where was I going? Oh yeah. One of the reasons I tell interesting stories is that because when a story is fun, it creates a different mind state. And that different mind state is one which is far more relaxed and peaceful. Sometimes that people get too serious when they're doing meditation. and they think that's an appropriate attitude to have when you're developing your mind. But you find if there's no joy and happiness in the mind, you'll often find that the mind will just either fall asleep or will go off into restlessness, creating stories. The meditation is not calling you. Meditation is not enjoyable to do. And I have to be honest to you, and I said this, I think it was to Nicholas this morning, I always look forward to meditation retreats, even if I'm just teaching them, not even practicing that much when I'm teaching. Actually, I do practice a lot. I've got a control over the schedule, so because I control the schedule, I make sure there's plenty of time for me just to sit down and be peaceful and do nothing. But I always look forward to them because of that. Because the meditation becomes a great time of joy and happiness, to hang out with my own mind. You may find this a kind of a strange way of describing it, but my mind is a really good friend. I don't need to train it. I don't need to make it do what I want. Instead, I enjoy its company for the 9 days. I usually give this simile later on, but it's just like, this is just a simile. Imagine that, you finish the retreat, and when you go home, you get a telephone call from one of your friends. And the friend said, "Are you free this afternoon?" And you say, "Yes, I'm free this afternoon." "Oh, great. Can you come out to this coffee shop? This coffee shop, I know you don't usually like coffee, you usually prefer tea, but I like coffee. And I want to introduce you to this coffee shop. And I know you usually like to sit in the front somewhere, but I like to sit in the back. So we'll sit in the back and we'll have a nice cup of coffee. And you won't have milk in it because that spoils the coffee. We'll have it with, I don't know, what do you have these days? Almond milk or something. It's good for your health. And we won't have any muffins, we'll have biscuits. And we'll sit there because I really need to talk to you about politics. It's really, really important because sometimes, with climate change and all the other problems in our world, we really need to sort of do something about that. And we'll spend about exactly 45 minutes on the cup of coffee and talking because that's all the time I have. So, are you coming? Now, what would you answer? But you've already said you're free, so you think very quickly. And you tell your friend on the telephone, I've just remembered. I've got to go to the dentist this afternoon. So I'm sorry, maybe next time. And because you're a good Buddhist, you will always call up your dentist as soon as possible to make an appointment because you can't break your precepts by lying. So you call up the dentist and make an emergency appointment. And then after you hang up from the dentist, another friend calls up and said, "I've heard you've just been on a retreat. Are you free this afternoon? Do you want to come out for a cup of tea?" And you think, "Oh, no, it's not coffee. Maybe tea is nice. I found this really nice tea shop. And it's really incredible tea. It's actually Sri Lankan leaf tea." How many people from Sri Lanka we've got here today? You know what I'm talking about? Sri Lankan leaf tea. And they also serve it with condensed milk, with tinkiri. I don't know about you, but I was looking at the internet and they had news about there's an election on in Australia, a general election. And they said one of the independent candidates, I've heard his name before, I never really liked him before, is I think Bob Catter. You've heard of him before? And they said that one of the things he really likes, so much so that he's had a wide electorate, one of the things which every office where he has to go to always has for him is a tin of condensed milk. He also appreciates condensed milk. And so I never liked him before, but my opinion of him has changed. Well, you can check that out if you like. So, and he's quite old and fit. How old is he?
He's old.
Yeah. You see, it's good for your health. I'm not going to go there. But anyhow, so he said it was really nice. If you want some other milk, that's fine, or just want green tea, whatever you wish. And I always really want to know about Buddhism and meditation. It's getting quite popular now in our world. Can you just spend some time? We'll talk about why are you interested in Buddhism, and what does meditation do for you? And he said, we sit anywhere in the restaurant you want. And so when you hear an invitation from a friend who wants to drink what you like to drink, eat what you like to eat, and also sit where you want to sit, and talk about something which interests you, how would you respond? Oh yeah, I'm going. And you ring up the dentist and say, sorry, it's not that important, I'm cancelling. And how long do you stay? If it's something you're interested in, something you enjoy, with a friend who cares for you and doesn't want to control you, you spend all afternoon there, 3 or 4 hours. Has that ever happened to you, being with a really good friend, and time loses its meaning, and you stay for such a long period of time? That certainly happened to me. The best example of that was when one time when I was visiting UK, I had met some of the old people we used to go to university with. I don't mind telling this story, although the person responsible for this story sometimes complains that I tell it. Because this young man, at university together, one day, I wasn't always a monk, and we had a party, it was actually in my rooms, and he was drunk a little bit too much alcohol, and when he went to the toilet, when he came back from the toilet, he forgot to put his trousers back on. Honestly. And so his name was Harry, and so from that day on he had the nickname Flash Harry. And that nickname stuck. We were just students doing stupid things. And so when I saw him, I hadn't seen him for many years, straight away, and I saw him and I said, "Hi Flash, how are you doing?" And so he told me what his job was now. He was a very smart guy, and he was like this really upmarket insurance guru. He was called an actuary. He really get paid a lot of money, and he was in this really sharp suit. And if you think like chartered accountants have to have a good reputation, actuaries need to have even a better reputation. So he said, look, if the other people I work with, if they found out that my nickname is Flash, I'll lose my job. And of course I burst out laughing and I said, no, they won't. Because everybody has just little stupid things they did. He won't ever do that one again. But anyway, I spent about 3 or 4 hours with him. I only had an hour really to spend. And I started talking with him, and this was in the middle of London. And I had to go to get some food to a Sri Lankan restaurant. They were feeding me. And I had to apologize to them because I never did any, I actually did do a very quick chant for them, but I was mostly talking with my friend all the time. And then from there, on the underground over to Wimbledon, I was talking to him all the time, and walking from the train station, Wimbledon Underground Station, to the temple in Wimbledon. And then when I was there, I was still talking to him. I hadn't finished. And I had to give a talk. To lots of people were attending the talk. And I had to ask them, can you please Give me another 5 minutes. And it wasn't just me talking to him, we're talking together. Because it was like a good old friend. We had such beautiful memories together as students. We felt no fear together. We could share everything together. And it's because of that, I love that simile. If your mind and you are like that, best of friends, you just hang out together. And that's actually how I regard how I meditate. Me and my breath and my mind, we hang out together. And there's no effort required. We don't feel afraid of each other. We don't try and control one another. I'm not the control freak who tells my mind what to do. I ask it what it needs. We have some wonderful, very delightful times together. Enormously delightful. And I think that's such an important part of meditation, which is often forgotten. Just be able to delight in your mind. I know that sometimes people feel that if you have too much fun, especially as you're a monk, oh my goodness, is that allowed to have fun as a monk? Is it allowable to have fun as a bhikkhuni? You bet it is. It's a type of fun. And the type of fun you have as a monk or a nun, and what the fun which I would like you to enjoy, is a beautiful joy, and it's called piti sukha, of the sixth sense of the mind. And that's what the Buddha said. The Buddha told one of his disciples, it's in the Pasadika Sutta, if anybody questions you and says, as a monk, just talking to a monk, if they ask you, are you allowed to have fun? You should actually say, what type of joy? And if it's a joy of the five senses, no. If it's a joy of the sixth sense, yes. That's why I hope you see the monks and the nuns with really big smiles on their face on this retreat. That smile which you get from these deep meditations or insights is not just pasted on your face. It comes quite naturally. The insights which feel you're so free, you're letting go, and the mind becomes empowered with what we call the piti sukha. And then if anybody asks you, if you indulge in that bliss and joy of the mind, then what happens? When I first read this, I thought, wow, this was really one of the most powerful teachings for me. It says, if you indulge in the joy and happiness of the meditations, there's only 4 possibilities for you. The first possibility is stream winning, the soul one. How many of you want to be soul ones? You don't have to put your hand up, I can read your mind, of course you do. That's stream winning. Second possibility is a once returner. Third possibility is a non-returner. And the fourth possibility is full enlightenment. That's what you're supposed to be doing. When I first read that, you really sort of, wow, this is a beautiful path to letting go so much and getting so much joy and happiness. This is a path to liberation. And after I read that, I remember, never again would I trust a miserable monk. Or a miserable nun. So, in other words, there's a huge amount of happiness in this path. And I want to make sure that you recognize that. And when it starts to happen, please indulge in it. Don't think something's going wrong, you're enjoying this path of meditation. It's the pleasures of the mind. And I love saying this, keep on repeating, I can't help myself. Even one of these first meditations, deep meditations, the first jhana, it's nice to see how the Buddha described it. And I say this because every time I repeat this, it just gives goosebumps to me. He said, how does it feel to get one of these deep meditations? He said, what the mind object is, you're mindful, but what you're aware of is, he called it, this is the Buddha's words, Sambodhi Sukha. And if you know your Pali, Sambodhi Sukha means literally enlightenment, happiness, enlightenment, bliss. I always have to comment on this point that it's not enlightenment, it's what we call a taste of enlightenment. It's that close. Do you want to feel what enlightenment is like? And then when you get one of these deep meditations, Sambodhi Sukha, wow, you're really enjoying this path of meditation. You're free, you're letting go of so much. And the Buddha was confident enough to say that that's what it feels like, a taste of freedom and enlightenment. That's what will motivate you. And it's also, you realize, to be able to experience those types of meditations, you have to be free. And this was something, even I think last night, I gave a talk to the monks and the nuns, and I did a bit of a discussion afterwards with some of the bhikkhunis. And I asked, they were asking me, just this sense of letting go or effort, and which one should you really do? It's something which confused me when I first became a monk. If you put forth effort, isn't that like the right effort in the Eightfold Path? Do you get anything by not doing anything? And when you're really lazy, what if you just sat here and had no goal and nothing you wanted to achieve? If you sense of nothing to work for, no effort, what would happen? But then again, if you ever look at the second factor of the Eightfold Path, and that's where I got the most interesting understandings from. What is that second factor of the Eightfold Path? It's like learning how to renounce everything. Basically not wanting anything. Is there something you want? Learning how to be kind and gentle. Nekama Sukha, Avyapada Sukha, and Ahingsaka Sukha. I'm sorry. Nekama Sankappa, Ahingsaka Sankappa, and no, I've got it all wrong. I'll start again. So one of the nice things is, even as a monk, you don't have to have it all right all the time. It's allowed to make mistakes, that's part of gentleness. So, doing it again, the three right, I always call it motivation, Sankappa, the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is Nekama Sankappa, Avyapada Sankappa, and Ahingsaka Sankappa. That is the correct rendering. And it means it's motivations of letting go. Letting go, motivations of renouncing everything, and also motivations of kindness, that's Avyapada, and motivations of gentleness, Ahingsaka. And those right motivations, well, how does that fit in with right effort? Sometimes we call it effort. This is what I was discussing with one of the bhikkhunis last night. There's something which we know as like 4 efforts or 4 strivings, and the word behind them. Am I getting too complicated for you? Okay, it's this word chanda. And this word chanda is like, a lot of time, it's rendered as effort. It's just you like the four powers, from effort. But this chanda does not really mean effort as we understand it, because chanda is something which a monk or a bhikkhuni know. If you cannot go to like an important meeting in the monastery, for example, if there's some important meeting at Dhammasara, you're here, you can't be at that meeting. So usually you give your chanda. It means like consent to proceed in your absence. It's not actually an effort, it's a permission for something to happen. It's a letting something be, rather than interfering or controlling with it. To fully understand that, and I'm sure this will come up in the Q&A later on, that to understand that fully, we know that this path of practice is a natural process. It's not something you do. This is something which, once those causes are put in place, the results will happen. A good simile to emphasize that is just how you grow a bed of flowers. If you're going to be a gardener and you're planting sort of a bed of flowers, how do you do that? Just make sure all the causes are in place. The seeds are there, it's watered, that the soil is fertile, and your main job is to protect it. It grows by itself. Remember one of the teachers, as a layperson, and this particular teacher, I don't know where he got all this from, but it was a beautiful teaching. He said that once in Thailand, his father had given him some little flower seedlings. He was only about 6 or 7 years of age, and taught him just to dig a little hole, put these little seedlings, they were like seeds, not seedlings, sorry, seeds in the ground, make sure it's well watered, and then just wait. And being only a 6 or 7 year old, it was the first time he'd planted anything, and he was just really wondering what was happening. He couldn't see any result because that little seed had germinated underground and was actually pushing through a very tiny little green shoot, and it hadn't gone above the surface of the soil yet. And after a few days, he asked his father, "It's not working, he can't see any results yet," after 3 or 4 days. And his father said, "Just wait, the little seedling is growing." And sure enough, his father was correct. You could see the little green shoot coming above the bare earth. And so he started watering that little seedling twice a day. Little guys aren't that patient. And after a few more days, the little seedling was a little green shoot, maybe 2 inches above the surface of the soil. It was working, but he said that that's when he lost his patience. He decided to stretch the little plant to make it grow quicker. And of course, what happened? You can't stretch plants to make them grow bigger. You just destroy them. And I remember him using that as a simile, a metaphor for meditation. If you try and stretch your progress in meditation, you tend to just almost kill it and delay the fruits of the meditation. Your job is just to protect it, to make sure that nothing happens to it. And to me that was always the right effort which was required. Basically, to be aware, be kind and caring, like a good gardener, but don't do anything. You can't stretch the meditation and make it go quicker. You may try if you like, but you'll destroy it. Why is that the case? The case is because that's coming from your ego, sense of self. Okay, I will now do this simply. Many of you have seen this before, but nevertheless, you're the closest to me. Are you honest?
Mostly.
Mostly. I want you to be 100% honest right now. Can you just stand up? Very good. Now I'm going to try and hold this water perfectly still. Has it stopped moving yet?
No.
It's still moving?
Yes.
Why is that? One of the things, I'm not really mindful. I'm just looking all over the place. I'll now be mindful. Has it stopped moving yet?
No, it's moving more.
Okay. So now I'm going to concentrate. Has it stopped yet?
No.
That's how many people meditate. They're mindful, they're concentrated. It doesn't work. How can I get this to be perfectly still?
Put it down.
Give the talk. Exactly, yes. But that's a little simile which I use very often. If you've been meditating here and nothing is working, and you're still as restless, why? Because you're holding your mind, and you're trying to be mindful, you're trying to concentrate, instead of just putting it down. Let it go. Don't interfere. Renounce. Be kind. Be gentle. You know how some people meditate though? They put the cup of water down, and then they look at it. Is it peaceful yet? No, come on. I'll put it in the wrong place. Maybe over there. Maybe over here. That's called interfering with it. And that's where we are mindful and we make sure we care and protect it. That's called kindness. We don't actually do anything. It's a weird thing, and people rarely understand this until it starts to happen. You put forth so much effort in your meditation and nothing works. And then a lot of time you give up. You know, one of the great meditators was the Buddha's chief disciple, or not disciple, chief disciple, sorry, his attendant for so many years, Ananda. You're my attendant on this retreat, so pay attention. How to become enlightened as an attendant. So Ananda was the attendant of the Buddha for about 25 years. Imagine just how much he'd heard and understood. And then the Buddha passed away. And Ananda thought, if I was so close to the Buddha and couldn't get enlightened, what chance is there for me to get enlightened now? This gentleman on the far right over here, what's your name, sir? Ananda. Yeah, you've heard this story before, so you know why I tell it. And so Ananda, the monk, after the Buddha passed away, he still wasn't enlightened. And he was selected to be one of the first, I think 500, to actually recite the teachings of the Buddha, to make sure it was all sort of gathered together and so people could remember it. And all the other 499 people at this meeting were all fully enlightened, except for him. You can imagine how he felt. So the night before the meeting, he meditated and meditated and meditated. He stayed up all night. He never slept. And when the sun came up, when the dawn came, he still wasn't enlightened. So you know what he did? To this day I call this the Ananda method of enlightenment. was very popular. What he did, he thought, I've been trying all night, I haven't got anywhere, so I'll go and take a nap. So he went to his room, just to take a nap, that's all, not to get enlightened. He lay down, and before his head hit the pillow, he became the 500th enlightened being. I call that the Ananda method of enlightenment. So when you go to bed this evening, don't want anything, just take a nice rest, and who knows, if you let go enough, just before your head hits the pillow, you will also become an enlightened being. But actually I don't really recommend that the first night. If you become enlightened tonight, what are you going to do for the rest of the retreat? Take your time. Get your money's worth. But that story, why did it happen? That's one of the reasons I tell it. Why? When anything strange like that happens, don't just think this is weird or this is wrong. It's real, you've experienced it. Find out why. And the reason why is he put the cup down. He wasn't trying anymore. He let things go. One of the other similes for that, which is even easier to understand, I don't know how many of you have been to these retreats before, or some of you may not have been on these retreats, but you've heard this on YouTube so many times. This was the story of the donkey and the carrot. I told that last night after the talk. Do you know the story of the donkey and the carrot? I will tell it anyway because I started. It's a beautiful simile, of how these deep experiences actually happen, how they occur. You know that in Europe, I know in Europe, also seen this in India, sometimes you use a donkey to pull a cart. And sometimes that carries beings, humans, sometimes it carries like vegetable produce. But it's a normal form of transportation, donkey cart. But donkeys are also very stubborn. I remember sometimes in plays I used to use the word like, my husband is as stubborn as a donkey. They're always known for being stubborn. So how can you get the donkey to pull a heavy cart? You can get a stick and try and beat the donkey. I remember seeing that, it's so cruel. That's not how you use a stick. Instead you tie the stick to the donkey's neck, and so the end of the stick is about 2 foot in front of the donkey's head. On the end of the stick you tie a string. On the end of the string you put a carrot. This is in Europe. And if you are in Penang, what do you put on the end of the stick? Durian, yes. You've heard the story before. And so what happens? This little donkey sees a durian on the end of the string. It's about 2 foot in front of its mouth. And the donkey moves towards that durian because it likes durian. It's a happy fruit for the donkey to eat. And so what happens? The donkey moves towards the durian. And because the stick is tied to the donkey's neck, on the end of the stick is a string, on the end of the string is a durian, the durian moves as well. And so it doesn't matter how fast that donkey moves or runs, the durian is always about 2 foot in front of the donkey's mouth. It's like meditation. So often you get so close. It seems to be so easy, but why doesn't it ever happen? But then the donkey has come and visited Jhana Grove. And now the donkeys understand how to catch those durians very easily. So the donkey runs after the durian, or the carrot, whichever you like, runs after it, and the way the donkey catches things is not by effort, by learning how to stop. Become perfectly still. When the donkey becomes perfectly still, what happens to the durian? It swings further away from the donkey, further than it's ever been before. But the donkey has patience. It's amazing how few people have patience these days. They come on a 9-day retreat, and sometimes people would ask for their money back if they don't get a jhana or so one stream winning. Would you ask for your money back? You can. At all the retreats which I teach, I always tell people, allow people, if it's not working, you can always ask for your money back. I guarantee that. You don't get it back, but you can ask. Sorry. That's the money back guarantee. And then people complain, so that way we don't actually charge anymore for these retreats. Otherwise, too many people would ask for their money back. No, so what happens is that you're patient. Have that little bit of trust. These things actually work. So you don't actually go running after things. You stay perfectly still. And the experience which happens is like the carrot or the durian, seems to go further away from you than it's ever been before. That's why sometimes in the middle of the retreat people say it's not working. Sometimes they think the plant, the flower plant, is not growing fast enough, and you pull it and destroy it. But if you continue just to be still and patient, you'll find that little durian goes further than it's ever been before, and then it stops, 4 foot away from your mouth. And then the wonderful things of meditation happen. You start experiencing this durian. You're not doing anything, you're just still. It starts swinging towards you. It goes as far as it can, then swings backwards to you. And soon as it's in its usual place, 2 foot in front of your mouth, and now it's coming at great speed towards you. And it comes so close to the donkey's mouth. And then the donkey has to remember that final piece of advice, which is to say to that piece of durian, the door of my mouth is open to you. Come in. Because donkeys have very big teeth. And if they don't open their mouth, they'll probably knock out a few teeth and don't get any durian at all. That little bit of kindness, as well as the stillness, those are the 2 most important ingredients to experience this beauty of meditation. Sitting down, letting go, stopping, and doing very little. I always love that word, stopping. That was actually one of those stories of Angulimala, chasing the Buddha with a big sharp sword in his hand, wanting to kill the Buddha. And he couldn't catch up to the Buddha, using some kind of psychic power. And Angulimala shouted out to Angulimala shouted out to the Buddha, "Stop, stop monk, stop." And that's when the Buddha spoke back at Angulimala, "I've already stopped, you stop." And sometimes that's not explained in enough detail. And how could that happen? Angulimala did stop. And later on he became a fully enlightened being. Stop. It's one of the reasons why when I first came to a city like Perth, I wondered where are all the signs of Buddhism in this city. If you go to Colombo, there's so many little statues of the Buddha all over on the streets, well looked after. But what have we got here in Perth, which shows just how strong Buddhism is in this city? I always say we have the stop signs at most road junctions. If you come to any of the road junctions here, you see the stop sign. So if you see that stop sign, you're not actually driving the car, you can put your hands up. So okay, it's an enjoyable little anecdote, but there's a lot of truth to that. How could an Angulimala become, he was a serial killer, and become fully enlightened? When he was told to stop, he kind of got it. It's not an ordinary way of stopping. On this retreat, see how much you can stop. All the things which you love to do. I don't know if you brought your mobile phones on this retreat. If you have, ask yourself why. And if it's at all possible, all you can do, I hope you were given this information, you can actually let so the caretakers or the manager know, and just let your friends and relations know. If there's any emergency comes up, please can you just call the retreat manager or leave an email on the caretaker's website. If it's an emergency, we can let you know. But a lot of times there's really nothing. You don't have to be in contact with everyone when you're on a retreat. You can stop. It's a wonderful opportunity here. It used to be the case when we first came here that we had very, very bad internet connection. That's why we built the place here. Because actually the truth of the matter was that where we have the mobile phone tower, which is just on the opposite side of the monastery, they made sure that they blocked signals in this direction mostly, because we have a prison further along, about 6 kilometers away. They did that to lessen the connectivity of any people messing around in the Carnet prison farm. That's what I was told. So we used to have very bad internet connection here. But since that time, the internet connection has improved. And there's also people have found out where you get good internet connection. A lot of times if I see people walking up the hill, it's not for exercise. It's to know up there you get much better connectivity. But why? A lot of times we're afraid if we don't connect, there's something wrong. No need to be afraid. It's nice to be able to grant yourself the permission to renounce, just for 9 days, to be free. Things don't go that wrong. And if there is any emergency, the people on the other side of the road in the monastery, they will let us know. So it's a perfectly safe place. There's no wild animals on this retreat. We used to have like a dugite snake, which was, but this is not the time for snakes. It's too cold for them. Christina, did you see the dugite this year? Is she here? Caretaker? So she's not here. Okay. We can maybe even ask her tomorrow. But it was actually such a beautiful snake. Would never harm anybody. It's a very venomous snake. we would just curl up in the sunshine somewhere, and it was a very, 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 very pleasant snake. You never have to be afraid of any of the animals here. And it means that you can just let go and relax and be peaceful in this environment. Oh, I should have said the reason why it's very safe, because it's been here for a long time, and so we call it a Buddhist snake. The Buddhists are non-violent. They've been trained like that. So even the snakes are non-violent. Do you know the difference between a Buddhist, say, kangaroo and a Christian kangaroo? You can actually tell, because a Christian kangaroo puts their hands up like this. A Buddhist kangaroo does this. But anyhow, that because there's nothing to be afraid of here, it's one of the first things for meditation success is to have a feeling of safety on this retreat center. That's one of the reasons why we ask everybody, to keep your precepts. That's what precepts are. A sense of that honesty, caring, not harming anybody, not taking sort of non-medicinal drugs or alcohol, which actually make you out of control, and just being a peaceful person. Sometimes when people used to ask me, especially like kids in schools in Australia, why do you keep those precepts? And especially you're a monk, how many precepts do you have? Isn't that a big burden? And I often say the main thing is just to have 2 precepts. Never doing anything which intentionally hurts or harms another living being. And number 2, never doing anything which hurts or harms oneself. And from all those 2 you get all the other precepts. Don't be someone who hurts yourself or others. And when you practice that for a few years, you get this wonderful feeling of being a harmless being who will never hurt or damage other beings or yourself. Which means you feel safe. Which means you can close your eyes and meditate here any time of the day or night and know that everything will be safe, protected. Even for, I mention this to so many people, and this is actually the truth of the matter, anybody who ever feels there's a ghost or some spirit hurting or harming you in this place, once the monks are here and the nuns, ghosts or spirits have to leave. Give you an example of that. Some years ago, there was one of our friends. She was like a medium, and she was pretty accurate too. And she invited an indigenous elder to come and see Bodhinyana Monastery. The indigenous elder so stopped at the gate to Bodhinyana Monastery and said, I've got to get out of the car, I can't go into this place. And when this lady came in and said, well, I did invite this indigenous elder to meet you, but he couldn't come in. And I scolded her. I said, look, all you needed to do was ask my permission. These are sensitive beings, and they cannot come in, without the senior monks and teachers' permission to come in. And that's like an indigenous elder. Any spirit or ghost, they cannot come in without our permission. That's the truth of the matter. And so when you're actually in this place, those beings have to leave. He's still alive, he helps out at Kusala teaching some meditation. He told me this story, that one of his teachers, one of the teachers I met and really admire, and sent him to a monastery which was renowned for its ghosts. And one day he was meditating, so he told me, and he thought it was a heavenly being came into his hut. It was in the afternoon, he was tired, and so he leant against the wall of the hut, put his feet out, and he felt like somebody pull one of his feet. And straight away he thought, yes, I deserve that because I was being sleepy. So he said, thank you. But then after that, over many days, this being kept coming in and disturbing him, even when he was meditating, like touching him, pulling him, disturbing him physically. And it always started to come in the next time with a very, very bad smell. And he realized that this was not a heavenly being trying to keep him aware, mindful. It was one of the ghosts in the area. And he solved the problem very easily. He told me, he said he was sitting meditating and this bad smell came into the room and he scolded the ghost. He said, you can come in here and meditate if you wish, but don't disturb me, otherwise get out. And he said that with quite a lot of power. And the ghost went out and never came back again. I often say that for those of you traditional Buddhists, to know that a human being is a much more higher level of being than any spirit. You have more power. And above just the ordinary human beings, like monks and nuns, you have even more power than an ordinary human being. I know that from some personal experiences. The ghosts are scared of you, especially scared of monks, senior monks. I've been a monk now over 50 years. So if any spirit actually does manage to sneak into this retreat center, just tell them, if they bother you, you better behave. Otherwise you report them to Ajahn Brahm. No, please, no. They have to behave. We're higher beings. So anyway, I can't linger on ghosts because otherwise people get too afraid to go back to their rooms. But nevertheless, that feeling of safety is important. Because when you have that feeling of safety, that means you can close your eyes and you're not trying to compensate with closed eyes, we're trying to listen to whatever things are. I remember that, some personal experiences. I remember once when I was staying in the jungle in Thailand, and there were some dangerous animals in the jungle. And at night time, when the sound of the cicadas and other animals sort of, kind of stop, and you're still meditating in there, out in the open, under the trees. And I heard this sound once, and of course that disturbs your meditation a little bit because sometimes it may be a dangerous animal. And so I listened to it. I couldn't see anything, it was dark. And I listened, and I thought, that's only a small animal. You can tell by just the noise it makes in the forest. So I just went back to my meditation object. And a minute or two later, I heard the sound again. And it was coming towards me, I was sure. And it sounded much bigger than I first thought. So I got a bit cautious. And I kept listening to it. And as I was listening to it more and more, I could tell just by the way it crushed the twigs on the forest floor and how it just broke off a few branches of some of the saplings, so I thought. I thought, oh my goodness, this could be a really dangerous animal. And as it came closer, it really made such really loud noises. I really thought this might be a tiger. I know Ajahn Chah used to tell me that tigers, they don't eat monks. And I asked him, how do you know? The tiger would not confess if he ate a monk, and the monk would be able to report once he's been eaten. So that didn't convince me. So as it came closer to this animal, I kind of got scared, and so I stopped my meditation and got a flashlight out. And I pointed it in the forest where I heard the sound. And I searched. I couldn't see a tiger anywhere. What I did see was a tiny mouse. When you're afraid, a mouse sounds as big as a tiger. It was my fear causing the exaggeration of any danger. That's one of the reasons why. Please keep your precepts and be a good person. And then you feel safe. Nothing can harm you. I've been in many dangerous situations in my life. Nothing ever can harm me. Even on one this is the last story. I know I get notorious for talking too many stories to the point that it's time that we should finish, and I keep going on. But this was one story that I remember when we first built, we took over our city centre in Nolamara. There used to be a Christian church before, so we took it over and made it a Buddhist temple. We had a big ceremony to inaugurate it, or to open it. We had the governor of Western Australia, that was Sir Gordon Reid at the time, and they got the Reid Highway named after him. He's a lovely man. And I was given the job of getting all the tents and the chairs, for the dignitaries. And so I did order the very best. I was told to by Ajahn Brahm, it doesn't matter the cost, we want to put on a show. And when they arrived, I think on the Saturday afternoon, no, it was a Friday afternoon, sorry. When they arrived, the tents were all really filthy. But you could fix that just with hoses, enough people to help. The chairs were also dirty. We could wipe them down with cloths. But the problem was we had a dozen VIP chairs, and not one of them, this is no exaggeration, not one of those 12 chairs had legs the same length. They wobbled. And we had the governor of Western Australia was coming. It was amazing that he would actually come to this event. We didn't want him falling off the chair. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. So I rang up the hire company and said, it's a mistake. You've given us some terrible chairs and we have West Australia governor coming. And so they're very good. They said, some mistake. And so they said, we'll change them straight away. What I didn't know, this was a Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon. And the person who answered the phone was the boss, a female. She said all the staff had already gone to the office. You know what the office meant? The pub. Starting their weekend drinking. They knocked off work. Now they were enjoying the weekend. And she actually went into the office and said, the Buddhists need their chairs changed. So these Australian workers, they were not happy. I never knew that until afterwards, but when they got in the truck and loaded on new chairs, and they came down Nansen Way, where our temple is in Perth, they were still going reasonably fast, and one of these guys jumped out of the cab of the truck when it was still going maybe 20 kilometers an hour. Kind of dangerous, but he never fell over. When he had his fist raised, and he said, "I want the bloke in charge. Where's the bloke in charge?" I was the one who ordered the chair, so I went up to him and said, "I'm the bloke in charge." I don't know if you've ever seen in the suttas description of things called yakas. That's what it reminded me of, especially because he had big red eyes, this guy. He'd been drinking, he was semi-drunk, and he put his fist right in front of my nose, like this. And he wasn't happy. And I must admit that was probably the most alcohol I ever breathed in the last 50 years. And he had his nose and his fist in front of me, just about to, I think they call it, punch my lights out. And were any of you there when this happened? Had a lot of people, they were working really hard. Were you there, Ananda, when this happened? Had a lot of people that were working really hard, but they stopped when this was happening to look. Not one of them came to help me. You ever seen that happen? I said, "Oh, what's going to happen now?" But I didn't need anybody because I was really peaceful. And he had this wonderful experience. The fellow there was really angry and mad, wanting to have a fight. But before you actually do the next stage of the fight, I was supposed to do something. Please excuse the words, but I don't know how else to explain it. He needed some foreplay before the actual fight began. I had to look afraid. I had to say, yeah, it was your fault, we ordered nice chairs. You can't just punch somebody. Because I wasn't playing that at all, I had the feeling I had him totally in my power, which I did. He couldn't move. He couldn't punch, he couldn't walk away. And then what happened was the truck had parked, and then the other workers came up and said, let's unload the truck. And so I helped them. We all unloaded it together. It was one of those wonderful occasions when violence was stopped. Because as a monk you don't get afraid. You don't get sort of scared. And just that peace and tranquility meant that the other person couldn't carry on with trying to hurt me or harm me. I don't know if you've ever had experiences like that. A lot of times, violence, someone needs to feel scared before they can even hit you. Anyway, that's one of these stories where I just said I'm going to finish at 9 o'clock. It's 9:01. So anyway, if you feel safe here, which I hope you do because people keep precepts, no one ever has died on one of these retreats, so you're not going to be the first one. No one has been possessed, so you're not going to be the first one. I wish you also a lot of peace and happiness. And when you feel comfortable, you can relax so much that your mind will become peaceful by itself and have a wonderful time. Thank you for listening. Excellent. Okay, so now it's anybody who wants to get enlightened quickly, please go to bed. Try the Ananda method, because sometimes I was a mathematician before, and I know probability theory. The more time you try that method, not the one time, but many times during this retreat, sooner or later you're increasing the probability it's going to work. It makes sense? Okay. So, please, if you need to take a rest, please do so. If you want to carry on meditating here, please do so. This place is yours. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent.